The rhythmic clank of metal against metal filled the small garage attached to Eli's modest home. It was his sanctuary, a place where machines made sense in ways people never had. At 32, he'd built a life of purposeful solitude in this rural outskirt of Coleman Springs, far enough from town that visitors were rare and always deliberate. Thunder growled overhead as he wiped grease from his hands. October storms came hard and fast in these parts. Rain lashed against the corrugated roof as he switched off the work lights and headed through the connecting door into his home. Eli was halfway through reheating yesterday's stew when a sound cut through the downpour, something between a crash and a soft thud against his front door. Not the wind, something solid. Hesitating, he set down his bowl and moved toward the entrance. The security light had triggered, casting harsh shadows across his porch through the window. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the door, a precaution from years of living alone, and turned the lock. "Hello," he called, cracking the door open. The security light illuminated a crumpled form on his welcome mat. Not an animal, a woman. At least she appeared mostly woman-shaped. Eli's breath caught as he dropped to his knees beside her. Her skin held a faint, pearl-like luminescence that seemed to pulse gently beneath the surface. Along her bare arms, intricate symbols, like nothing he'd ever seen, glowed with a soft blue light, then dimmed, then brightened again in rhythmic waves. "Hey," he said, touching her shoulder gently. No response. Rain pelted them both. Decision made, Eli carefully gathered her into his arms. She was lighter than expected, almost fragile. Up close, he noted the slightly elongated shape of her closed eyes, the delicate ridges along her temples, the silver-white hair that seemed too luminous to be dyed. He laid her on his couch, quickly gathering towels to dry her and a blanket to ward off shock. Her clothing was strange, a close-fitting jumpsuit of some material that seemed to repel the water, yet was torn at the shoulder, revealing more of those pulsing symbols underneath. For 15 minutes, Eli alternated between checking her pulse, present but irregular, debating whether to call 911, what would he even say, and packing his small living room. Finally, the woman's fingers twitched and her eyes fluttered open. Eli froze. Her eyes were mesmerizing, silver irises with subtle patterns moving within them, like clouds swirling in miniature skis. Her voice was melodic but weak. "How far did I travel?" "You're about 20 miles outside Coleman Springs," Eli answered cautiously. "I found you collapsed outside my door." A series of emotions crossed her face, confusion, realization, then something like resignation. She tried to sit up but fell back with a wince. "I'm Eli," he offered, keeping his distance. "Lyra," she replied, her gaze locking on his. "I didn't intend to find you so soon." "Find me?" Alarm bells rang in Eli's mind, but something held him in place. Lyra's hand moved to her chest, where the symbols pulsed brighter momentarily. "I'm not from your world. My research team has been studying Earth's atmosphere from orbit. I wasn't supposed to make contact." She paused, grimacing as the symbols on her arm flared bright, then dimmed significantly. "Why did you?" Eli asked, torn between disbelief and the undeniable evidence before his eyes. "I didn't choose to," her voice weakened. "My species experiences one mating cycle in our lifetime. When it begins, our bodies seek out the only compatible match we can bond with. I fought the pull, but the ship's containment field failed." Her eyes fixed on his, intense and vulnerable. "My body led me here, to you." Eli sat back, stunned. "That's impossible." "I understand your doubt," Lyra whispered, the glow of her skin noticeably dimmer now. "But without completing the bond, I'll die. I had perhaps 6 of your Earth days remaining when the cycle began. Now I have less." Outside, the storm intensified, but it seemed distant compared to the storm brewing in Eli's mind as he stared at the alien woman on his couch. A woman who had quite literally fallen from the sky, claiming their lives were somehow cosmically intertwined. "You're saying I'm your... what exactly?" Eli paced the small living room, running his hands through his disheveled hair. Outside, the storm had subsided to a gentle patter against the windows. Lyra sat wrapped in his blanket, her luminescence fluctuating like a guttering candle. "In your terms, a soulmate, but it's more biological than mystical for my kind." She traced one of the dimming symbols on her arm. "These markings contain my genetic memory and essence. When our mating cycle begins, they activate to find genetic compatibility." "But I'm human," Eli said, stopping to face her. A small smile touched her lips. "The universe is vast, but certain patterns repeat. My species evolved similarly to yours, just under different stars." She winced as pain visibly rippled through her. "I shouldn't have come. The research protocols were clear, no contact." Eli found himself kneeling beside her, concern overriding his disbelief. "Your team, can they help you?" Lyra shook her head. Our ship detected my pod's descent. Protocol dictates they continue the mission and report my desertion, her voice caught. I violated our highest directive by coming here. Because of this mating thing. The luminous convergence, she corrected gently. It's beyond physical attraction, a complete merging of life forces. Her eyes met his, vulnerability etched across her features. When it begins, instinct overrides everything. I fought it for days before my escape pod launched. Eli stood and walked to the window, staring at the clearing sky. Stars peeked through dissipating clouds, one of them perhaps her home. What happens if we don't bond? He asked quietly. My light will fade completely. Her voice was matter of fact. The cycle can't be reversed once begun. Eli turned, studying this impossible woman. Yesterday he'd been alone, fixing engines and avoiding entanglements. Now someone's life, an alien's life, hung in the balance of his decision. And if we do bond, what then? Lyra's expression softened. Then we're connected permanently. You would carry part of my essence as I would yours. Your life would change in ways I can't fully predict. Would you be stuck here? Yes, the bond prevents long separations. Eli ran his hands over his face. This is insane. I understand, Lyra's voice wavered. I won't ask this of you, Eli. It wasn't fair for my biology to choose you without consent. The sincerity in her voice touched something in him, something long dormant. How long had it been since anyone had truly needed him, not just for a car repair, but deeply, fundamentally needed him? I need time, he said finally, to process this. Lyra nodded, closing her eyes as exhaustion overtook her. Time is something I have preciously little of, but what remains is yours. As she drifted into sleep, Eli noticed the symbols on her arms pulse once, brightly, before dimming to their lowest glow yet. 3 days passed in a strange domestic rhythm. Eli called the garage where he worked part-time, claiming illness. Instead, he spent his hours caring for Lyra, whose strength ebbed visibly with each passing day. Between bouts of weakness, she told him about her world, a planet orbiting a binary star system, where the double sunsets painted the sky in purples and golds. She described cities built into massive crystalline formations and the atmospheric research that had brought her team to Earth. We've been monitoring the changes in your atmosphere, she explained as they sat on his small back porch, Lyra wrapped in blankets despite the afternoon warmth. Your climate crisis mirrors one our world faced centuries ago. Eli handed her a cup of tea. She'd developed a fondness for chamomile. Did your people solve it? Nearly too late, her hand trembled as she accepted the cup. That's why we study other worlds now, to help them avoid our mistakes. The symbols on her arms had faded to a dull glow, and her once luminescent skin now only shimmered when emotions ran high. Twice during the night, Eli had awakened to her cries, finding her curled in pain as the biological clock of her species counted down. You're getting worse, he said, not as a question. Lyra nodded. The convergence is nearly complete. Soon my body will accept that the bond won't form. Something twisted in Eli's chest. He'd spent his life avoiding attachment after losing his parents young, then experiencing a relationship that had left him scarred and withdrawn. But watching Lyra fade daily had awakened feelings he thought long buried. What if, he started, then stopped himself? Her silver eyes found his. What? What if I said yes? How would it even work? Hope flickered across her features, making her skin briefly brighten. The process is intimate. Physical connection initiates it, but the bond forms on a cellular level. Would it hurt? No, her voice softened. It's said to be the most profound pleasure our species can experience. Heat crept up Eli's neck, and afterward would you be normal again? Yes, though changed, as would you. She set down her untouched tea. But Eli, I need you to understand this isn't temporary. On my world, bonded pairs remain together until death. The connection is too deep to sever. The weight of permanence hung between them. For someone who had spent years ensuring nothing and no one could tie him down, the prospect was terrifying. That night, Eli found Lyra collapsed on the bathroom floor, her breathing shallow, the symbols on her arms barely visible. As he carried her back to bed, fear gripped him like nothing he'd felt before. I'm sorry, she whispered against his chest, her voice frail. I should never have brought this burden to your door. Laying her gently on the bed, Eli made a decision that surprised even himself. He sat beside her, taking her cold hand in his. Tell me what to do, he said quietly, to help you to bond. You don't understand what you're offering, Lyra whispered, her eyes searching his. Once done, it can never be undone. Eli sat beside her on the bed, holding her increasingly cold hand. I understand enough, you'll die otherwise. Compassion alone isn't reason enough for something this permanent. The room fell silent save for the ticking of the wall clock and Lyra's labored breathing. Outside, night had fallen, stars visible through the bedroom window, countless worlds, and somehow she had found her way to his doorstep. It's not just compassion, Eli finally said, surprising himself with the admission. These past days, I've told you things I've never told anyone, and when I look at you, he paused, struggling with words that had rusted from disuse. Something recognizes you, something inside me knows you. Lyra's eyes glistened. The convergence, it works both ways, though more subtly in your species. I've spent my whole life running from connection, he continued. After my parents died, after Melissa left, it was easier to be alone, to work with machines instead of people. And now I'm terrified, he admitted, but watching you fade away scares me more. A tear slipped down Lyra's cheek, leaving a luminescent trail. I need to know you're certain. Your life will never be the same. Eli thought of his solitary existence, the quiet garage, the empty house, the years stretching before him in predictable isolation. Then he looked at Lyra, this impossible being who had literally fallen from the stars into his life. Maybe it's time for change, he said softly. With effort, Lyra sat up, her silver-white hair falling around her shoulders. The bonding must happen before the next sunrise or it will be too late. She reached for him with trembling hands. It begins with physical connection but becomes much more. As the night deepened around them, Eli let Lyra guide him through the ritual of her people. Their first kiss sent visible energy cascading across her skin, the symbols on her arms brightening. Each touch deepened the connection, awakening sensations neither had experienced before. When they finally joined as one, the room filled with soft blue light emanating from Lyra's reawakening luminescence. Eli felt something open within him, a door to awareness he hadn't known existed. He could sense Lyra's emotions, glimpse fragments of her memories, feel the alien rhythm of her heartbeat alongside his own. I feel you, he gasped, overwhelmed by the intimacy of their connection. And I you, she whispered against his lips. Our essences are merging. The culmination of their bond manifested as light pouring from her body into his, creating patterns across his skin that mirrored her own symbols, temporary markings that left permanent changes beneath. In that moment of complete vulnerability and connection, both were transformed. When dawn broke, they lay entwined, forever altered by what they had become together. Eli awoke to sunlight streaming through the window and the unfamiliar sensation of another consciousness brushing against his own. He opened his eyes to find Lyra watching him, her skin glowing with renewed vitality, the symbols on her arms pulsing with strong, steady light. You're better, he whispered, reaching out to touch her face, marveling at how natural the gesture felt now. Because of you, she leaned into his touch. How do you feel? Eli took inventory of himself. Physically, he felt stronger, more alert, but the real changes lay deeper. Different. I can sense you in my mind like background music. Lyra smiled. The bond will settle in time. The awareness will become comfortable, like knowing where your limbs are without looking. He sat up, noticing faint, silvery lines under his skin where her symbols had briefly appeared during their union. Will these be permanent? No, but they mark where the changes have occurred. She traced a pattern on his arm. Your DNA has been subtly altered, not enough to make you non-human, but enough to accommodate our connection. And what about you? Are you still alien? I'm still me, she said, but I've gained some of your hardiness. I'll be able to live comfortably on Earth now. The reality of their situation suddenly hit Eli full force. What happens now? You can't exactly get a driver's license or social security number. Lyra laughed, the sound creating pleasant ripples through their bond. I have knowledge that could be valuable here, scientific understanding centuries ahead of Earth's. We'd have to be careful, Eli cautioned, if the wrong people discovered what you are. We'll find a way, she placed her hand over his. That's what bonded pairs do, we navigate the universe together. As the days passed, they discovered the full extent of their transformation. Through their bond, Lyra could share her knowledge directly with Eli, who found himself understanding complex scientific principles that had previously been beyond him. In turn, his lifetime of human experience helped her adapt to Earth culture and customs. They moved carefully, creating a new identity for Lyra as a remote scientific consultant. Her insights into atmospheric science, transmitted through Eli, brought modest income and minimal attention, exactly what they wanted. At night, when their bond seemed to strengthen, they often sat under the stars on Eli's, now their porch. Sometimes Lyra would point to a distant constellation. My sun is there, she would say, but my home is here now. 6 months after Lyra had collapsed on his doorstep, Eli realized his life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. His solitude had been replaced by the most profound connection possible, one that crossed the stars themselves. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked one evening as they watched a meteor shower streak across the sky. "Giving up your world, your research, everything you knew." Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the shooting stars above. Through their bond, he could feel her contentment before she even spoke. "The universe brought me exactly where I needed to be," she said, the symbols on her arms pulsing with emotion. "Some journeys aren't about the stars we leave behind, but the ones we find." Eli pulled her close, feeling the synchronization of their heartbeats, one human, one alien, now forever intertwined. Beyond the yard, the vast night sky stretched endlessly, full of worlds and possibilities. But for the first time in his life, Eli had no desire to escape or run. His universe, once so small and solitary, had expanded infinitely, all because he had opened his door to a cosmic visitor who needed him as much as he, without knowing it, had needed her.